Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. And we appreciate everybody being here today, especially since it's so nice. And we've got, according to the screen, 42 people here. So that's impressive. I tried to go play golf and Dean said I couldn't. So anyway, we'll go ahead and get started with the first TATT chat of the month. And again, you guys that have been here, you know what the deal is. So we're going to get some great information, get some reflection on what's happening on county updates across the region. And as always, you'll learn something. I've learned something almost every time, I guess every time that I've listened in on one of these calls. So having said that, I'm going to turn it over to Justine, and she's going to do some introductions. Justine?
Thank you, Mayor Roberts. We are very excited to have today some broadband experts in South Carolina and the upstate. So I'll introduce all three. And if you have some questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll get to them as we go or at a convenient time for our speakers. We've got Tom Allen. He is the Director of Safety, Transportation, and Emergency Response for South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff. It's a very academic title. And Jim Stritzinger, he's President and CEO with Revolution D. He's going to talk about some really interesting and innovative ways to get broadband to rural communities. And then, of course, Sharon Sears, Director, sorry, I'm admitting people while I'm talking. Director of Commercial Services with WCTEL. So not necessarily in that order, but I believe that Mr. Allen will be starting us off.
Yep. Thank you all for having me. I do kind of want to do an audio check here. The HVAC system in my office tends to blow very loud, so I will try to talk as loud as I possibly can. Give me the high sign if you can't hear me, and I'll try to make some adjustments here.
Sounds great.
Very good. Again, my name is Tom Allen with the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff. I do have a presentation here for you that I'd like to go ahead and get started with. There we go. All right. Well, are y'all able to see my screen? I seem to be having some technical difficulties here.
Yep, we can see it.
You've got it? Well, let me try one more time. I'm sorry.
No problem. We know you just had a moment to get your
and that is again, I apologize on that. I thought I was going to have a little bit more time to get prepared.
There we go.
Yeah, and I'm there we go. Okay. Very good. All right, now we can get started here. Okay, again, I just wanted to provide you with an update on our agency's efforts in the arena of broadband. Again, I appreciate y'all having me. I know we've got a lot to cover in a short time, so I'll move as fast as I can. I tend to be a fast talker, so just stop me if you have a question or put some questions in the chat box there, and we'll go. So really, the reason that we wanted to be here today and present to you is I wanted to give you a quick overview of the ORS, and then discuss, Act 142, which is which was the money that provided some broadband funds to Office of Regulatory Staff. And of course, we always want to build relationships with anybody in the state so that we can take us in a good direction, and also to find out anything that you might need from us. Again, I'm Tom Allen. I'm Director of Safety, Transportation, and Telecommunications. In general, I've got oversight over our rail safety programs, our pipeline safety programs, our transportation for hire, that's like household good movers, taxis, Uber and Lyft, also our telecommunications program, and also am the lead for our emergency support function that we're attached to the Emergency Management Division during times of severe weather, any crisis, any incidents. Now, a little bit about the ORS. ORS is a fairly new agency. We've been around for about 17 years, and our job is to represent the consumers of investor-owned utilities in South Carolina before the Public Service Commission. The PSC is actually a state agency that sets rates, but we appear before the Public Service Commission to advocate on behalf of the public interest. But you're here to talk about broadband, so I'll get into that real quick. Last summer, the General Assembly allocated $50 million to the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff from the CARES Act funding that South Carolina received. And this was to promote broadband initiatives in South Carolina. And the General Assembly mandated that of that $50 million, $20 million was to go to monthly service monthly service and hotspots for students that were out of school. We were allocated $300,000 for a mapping project, and then just over $29 million to do infrastructure grant programs.
Excuse me for a moment, Tom. I don't think the slides aren't moving forward.
The slides aren't moving. I got some technical help in here. Landon, I was explaining to everybody that I did not have time to do a check, a technology check here. My apologies to everybody. Thank you for correcting me.
Well, it's always nice when before you get 10 minutes in when someone tells you that it's not moving along.
Down, right there. Just click the, okay.
Thanks, Landon.
All right, are we better there?
Yep.
Okay, good. Okay, so as I was explaining, we had those three buckets that we were to allocate towards broadband projects. First, let's start with our mapping. We did hire a vendor, CostQuest Associates. We sent out 2 surveys to all the broadband providers in South Carolina, along with letters of support from legislative leadership as well as the governor, because we needed good data from those internet service providers. And we did receive that data, although it was a chore at times, we did receive the data, and the maps were completed and posted in the middle of December. We recognize that those maps have many flaws in them, and we are currently working with our providers, with the internet providers right now to refine those maps. At one point, the map will transfer from being maintained by CostQuest to being maintained by Revenue and Fiscal Affairs, which is a state agency. And at that time, they'll maintain it, we'll own the data, but the state will have full access and rights. And we're looking at probably updating that map. Hadn't quite been determined, but at a minimum, once a year, that map would be determined. I would say it needs to be updated more frequently than that, but it is a logistical situation. Okay, so in our mapping, again, we were allocated $300,000. We paid just under $300,000 to our vendor, and we'll spend about $120,000 with RFA for maintenance of the map. So you can see we spent, just over $400,000 of taxpayer money to get a good solid map for our folks. The one project that I was really involved in more than these other 3 buckets was the online learning initiative. In June, when the General Assembly told us that we were to be given this money, one of the things was that we needed to help our students before they got back to school, especially those that didn't have internet access. They wanted us to procure mobile hotspots for all students that needed it in South Carolina. Now, we did, to the best of our ability, actually go to the wired service providers and try to hook up students so that we knew that there would be some connectivity problems with hotspots. So as best we could, we went to wired providers and had some contracts to get those students some monthly service. But it wasn't doable in all parts of South Carolina. So we did have to go through and continue and get our students some hotspots. And it was serviceable, but we know a lot more has to be done to connect so many of these students so that they can adequately perform their schoolwork. Now, this program actually transferred to the Department of Education on December 30th, and they are currently maintaining that program through June. There were some requirements to receive a hotspot or wired service. These folks in general had to be, 250% or less of the poverty level. They had to attend school, whether it was K to 12 or whether it was in college. The schools actually distributed the hotspots, and we had to focus, especially in July and August, on priority schools in those impoverished counties, and then we were able to roll it out to the rest of the state. You know, this was new to us. We had to develop things like a memorandum of understanding with the school districts. We had to develop order forms. We had to enter into contracts with providers, and we were able to do that all in a matter of about 6 weeks, and start getting those hotspots rolling by the first week in August. So it was a Herculean task, but we think we did a decent job of it. In the end, here are our numbers. We served 82 school districts. We had 4 private schools. We had a couple of charter schools, 26 institutes of higher education. And there you see our vendors, Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile, as well as many of the internet service providers in the state. So we had a total of about 92,000 either hotspots or wired services distributed. Again, there's our allocation. We were given $20 million. We expended a little over 12 million, and we transferred 8 million to the Department of Education for the maintenance of that hotspot program. Our infrastructure program, very proud of this as well. You know, we were given the duty to expand broadband infrastructure to emphasize on those rural areas. And with the help of Mr. Jim Stritzinger, we were able to identify areas of need in South Carolina. Rev D and his company actually produced a map so that we could have target areas, places that we need to really look to expand broadband. And again, we had to develop things like an overview, press releases, applications, guidelines for our a funding agreement, means of reporting for those providers that were given this grant money. And this is how quick it went. And this was really the big problem with not expanding broadband to as many places as we possibly could have. You can see we had a window of about 4 months from the time the areas of need were published to the time the final report was due. These folks had 4 months, you know, to get fiber in the ground, to do construction, to hire subcontractors, all the things that go on to expanding a broadband to unserved areas had to be done in 4 months. And to boot, you can imagine there was a severe equipment shortage. Things like fiber, et cetera, were hard to come by. So a lot of these projects actually didn't get finished. We've had 78 applications by 14 different companies that served 27 different counties and hit 59 program targets, 35 priority targets. Almost 20,000 homes and businesses gained access to broadband during this time. And we had about 17 million was spent in this program. Again, we were given 29 million, 25 million in funds committed. Only 17 of that was committed. And the reason for that discrepancy is about 8 million in projects were not able to be completed. And they had to, by federal law, had to be completed by December 30th. Now we're moving into our next phase. ORS has been given an allocation of $30 million from the Department of Commerce to put a competitive grant program in place to expand broadband availability in South Carolina. So this is going to be a program jointly between ORS and the Department of Commerce, and we're currently developing the guidelines and the applications. Now, only certain counties are going to be eligible for this. It's going to be the 14 most impoverished counties. And it'll run very similar. It'll be a 1-to-1 match, and it has to be of non-public funds. Now, there is a possibility in the governor's budget that he proposed in January, additional $30 million that may be allocated to ORS, and that $30 million would actually be available to the entire state of South Carolina for grant funding. Here's our timeline. We're going to start here in early March, mid-March, and we're going to run through. We'll have a little bit more time. You know, we learned lessons from that last program. We knew that the providers need time to put things in the ground and hang things on poles. So we're giving them about 15 months to be able to complete these projects this time. And I know I ran very long, so I'm going to kind of skip my wrap up. Everybody obviously is fully aware of the need for the expansion of broadband in South Carolina. We're here to help, but our role in broadband as a state agency is very limited. We're only able to do things that the General Assembly specifically asked us to do, but we are always willing to help, whether it's run down information, keep an eye on things, or ask questions for people. So we're here to help. Very much appreciate y'all letting me be a part of this. Apologies once again for the technical difficulties earlier.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions? I was thinking about the Commerce's Rural Summit earlier this week, and it was so interesting how they really got into the basics of what is broadband, and all of these terms that we throw around but we don't really know what they mean. Would you tell everyone how they can find the map to show?
Oh,
or give us the link?
absolutely. I will take some time to get that link, and I will put it in the chat box for everybody.
Great. So it shows where broadband is available, not necessarily 100% accurately at this point, but it's handy to have. And then, so do I, in reading the timeline there for 2023, could I intelligently say that those rural communities would be covered by that point and the whole state speak?
I certainly wouldn't say that. If you look at the $30 million that we're getting from Commerce, and then if the governor was to give us in his budget was allocated another $30 million, that's $60 million total. That's a drop in the bucket. Estimates for, to fully universal coverage for South Carolina is probably closer to $1.4 billion. So, we recognize that this is, again, just a small piece of what needs to be done, but there is, other funding that's available. South Carolina was, had hundreds of $1 millions were granted to companies in South Carolina with the RDOF funding, the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, from the FCC. There's another round of funding that's going to be awarded, in the fall, late fall of next year. So, we're taking baby steps. It needs to happen fast, but we are taking baby steps. But admittedly, that little bit of money that we're getting is not going to do the job. We really need to focus and as a state and as our state leadership and really get this money available and prioritized so that we can make this service available to all the citizens.
Thank you. That's a great, I meant to go and see where that recording is from the Rural Summit earlier this week, because Nanette did a great job of explaining these details and how expensive it is and how it all works. And we did have one question in the chat. Barbara Nesbitt is asking, who's eligible to apply for the grants? Do you have to be an ISP? And I'm assuming that will be in the documentation that you're producing.
Yeah, it is. Thank you. That's a great question, and I certainly should have shared that. With this grant funding round coming up, it's technology neutral. Is any company that would have the ability to give folks the ability to reach and access the internet is available. So in other words, folks that want to put, an ISP that wants to put fiber in the ground, or, an electric co-op that's hanging on their poles, they're certainly able to put in for this grant funding, but it doesn't preclude, a wireless provider, or a satellite company. We've got a Starlink, which is an Elon Musk subsidiary that's, putting in facilities in South Carolina. So, as long as they are an internet service provider, then they would be eligible for the grant. So I think, in sum, what I would say is, a township, a municipality would not be eligible to participate in this grant, but they certainly could build, a consortium, a group, an advocacy to go to a company and say, listen, and I'll just use Charter. Listen, Charter, if you come to our city, we're going to guarantee that we'll have a 75% take rate. or an 80% take rate, or whatever the case may be. So I think certainly the opportunity for the citizens to be involved and to contact companies that are close to providing service but just haven't quite made it there. I think there's opportunities for them there to go to those companies and say, if you build it, we will buy it.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, so keep putting questions in the chat and we will try to get to them, or Tom can kind of check that out as we go too. Let's take it away, Jim.
All right, thanks. And Tom, thank you. Great information, and really even better than that, it's been a great partnership working with ORS. I've had the pleasure to work with that state agency quite a lot over the last 6 or 8 months, but I want to start by taking everybody back in time and doing a little historical reference. You'll notice I love this book. I found this book. It was written in 1984. And if you'll indulge me for a moment, I want to share this quote. It's in the front of the book. And this farmer in 1940 gets up in church and says, "Brothers and sisters, I want to tell you this, the greatest thing on earth is to have the love of God in your heart. But the next greatest thing is to have electricity in your house." And I share that with everybody today because we can all say the same thing. You just switch the word electricity with internet, and wow, history is really repeating itself. So this book is really a reference to 1937 when Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed the Rural Electrification Act. And we're really at the same point in time in the US economy where it's our generation's turn to give back and to do what we can. And that's fixing the internet. It's a big problem. I know, I'm an admitted nerd geek. I know I saw Dr. Nesbitt jump on, so she knows on the call. But I want to give a little bit of terminology for those that are not in this world all the time. You're going to hear the words used a lot: access, adoption, and use. Those are words, kind of definitional terms I want to give for everybody. The word access means available physical infrastructure. The word adoption means the choice of a resident or business to actually subscribe to service. And the word use means all the cool things you can do on the internet, but it's also recognizing that when a house first connects to the internet, when a family first gets internet in their home, they're kind of a beginning user. They're not ready for virtual reality and streaming a lot of movies and doing all that stuff and having a smart home. They're kind of beginning their journey. And we have a lot of homes in South Carolina that are very much building their, starting their mission on the internet. When you get into this world, you're going to hear the term 25.3 used a lot. And 25.3 is a reference to a download speed and an upload speed, 25 megabits per second down, 3 megabits per second up. And simply stated, that's a speed by which a student can do their homework. It's also a speed by which a resident or a family member can do a telehealth visit. A doctor's not going to render a diagnosis and issue a prescription if they can't hear your voice clearly and see your face and maybe do a diagnosis. So 25.3 is the way the whole United States is measured. It was a order of the FCC that was done in January 2015. And all the mapping and all the work we do is based on that benchmark. Something I will share with everybody is this little app called Speed Test. Now that I've told you that 25.3 is a benchmark, how can you figure out if your own home has 25.3 or not? And the answer to that is using a real simple app. It's made by a company called Ookla in Seattle. And they're the global leader in doing this, done billions of tests. Throw the app on your phone and press go, and you can see instantly whether your phone, business, or home gets 25.3 service. What we've done was really unique in South Carolina is we've been able to take the best federal data from the FCC and blend it together with our local providers. And I know Shannon and West Carolina Tel's on. They've been contributing data to this effort, and we've been able to mash it up and blend it together with the Ookla data. So one of the things that I've done is licensed all of the Ookla speed tests. So quite literally, every time a resident runs a speed test, our maps get smarter. And that's the way we want to be in South Carolina. I know ORS has a set of maps. I've also built a set of maps over the years, and I'll invite you all to come to the Digital Drive if you want to see those. It's scdigitaldrive.com. They're all free. I want to share, Tom did a great job, obviously, of talking about state resources for grants. I want to share some of the federal resources that have come down to South Carolina. This is a map I did for what's known as the FCC's RDOF fund, was awarded on December 7th. But you can see the places where funding was awarded. By far, the overwhelming winner of RDOF's subsidy for the state of South Carolina is Charter Communications. The number 2 winner of subsidy is SpaceX, Elon Musk's company. And you can see the blue. These are areas where Charter will be receiving federal funds to build fiber to the home over the next 6 to 8 years. And that's a key point, is just because the money is there doesn't mean this gets done overnight. There's a very sophisticated engineering process that has to happen. And each county is going to be prioritized, racked and stacked. But that's how the federal money has played out. Interestingly, also from the federal side, the U.S. Department of Agriculture has played a nice role in providing funding for the state of South Carolina. They've made a combined investment of $36.4 million. The first grant happening in October of 2019. The most recent one happening in January of this year to Lancaster, Chester County. But you can see how those awards have gone. And these, again, are multi-year grants. These projects are 5 to 7 years. But we've gotten enough money to connect 21,000 homes and 56,000 residents. I can tell you that there's been amazing collaboration of the state resources, the governor's office, and everybody in the state. A lot of collaboration to make this happen, and USDA has been a wonderful partner. Something I do, and I think there are some folks on the call that are my broadband champions. I've been teaching a training class for a lot of last year. I think I've trained over 100 people now on this topic. It's a very complicated topic. There's a lot of technical challenges to understanding broadband, but also how does broadband interact with K-12? How does broadband interact with healthcare? And understanding how all the pieces and parts fit together. But I try to help you understand how to become an advocate for your community, how to work well with your internet service provider, and really roll out the red carpet and bring your provider to town. That's kind of the key. And honestly, that's a great segue to talk about bringing a great provider to town. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let Shannon Sears take over and tell you all about West Carolina Tel and the cool things they're doing.
Oh, I'll be happy to, Jim. That was a great segue into that, and I appreciate that. And Justine, I'm good to get going. You can hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to say I appreciate what Jim said about our company, but also tell Mr. Allen that we 11 of those areas West Carolina applied for that he was talking about to be done in the last 4 months of the year. And we got all 11 of them done. We worked very hard to do that, and that's providing service to underserved areas, and that's what we've always tried to do. And I don't want to make this a commercial about us, because it's not about us. We want to talk about, you know, broadband in our area, but I am going to tell you a little bit about West Carolina just to give you some context and give you some framework of a partnership that we're going to talk about. But first, I'll do an intro of who we are, and then I want to talk about some basic broadband and then a partnership that we have. But I don't want to, I don't have any slides, so I apologize for that. You're just going to have to hear me rattle on. And if Tom thinks he can talk fast, I probably can outdo him. So you might have to just tell me to slow down, just the opposite. You'll be able to hear me. But so to give you a little bit of background on West Carolina, we were formed in 1952. And I only say that to say this: we've been around for a long time. We were founded as a telephone cooperative. Our service territory was Abbeville County, McCormick County, and Star and Iva areas of Anderson County. So that was our traditional service area. And again, we were a telephone provider in there. We were one of the first companies to have a full fiber to the home build out that we completed in 2011. Again, our history is serving underserved areas. That's how we were founded as a telephone company, so that our small town, rural areas would not fall behind. So really, we transitioned from a telephone company to a broadband company that provides high-speed internet over fiber optic network. So we're excited about that because we feel like that prepares us for the future and for all the things that are to come, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But that was our territory. But the Telecommunications Act of '96 allowed us to go in or to go outside of our territory and compete and to provide service to other areas that might be underserved. So we formed WC Fiber. WC Fiber is a subsidiary company of West Carolina Telephone Cooperative. We started providing service in Columbia County, Georgia, actually, which is at the very bottom of our territory if you go south. Then we decided to branch out into Greenwood. They were asking us, you know, come to our area and provide service. We really need some reliable internet service over fiber optics. So we began to build out into Greenwood, and that project has been very successful and continues to own this to this day as we continue to sign up customers. We also entered into a public-private partnership with the city of Newberry. We partnered with them to build out fiber inside the city limits, and we've completed that project last year. So that's exciting to continue to build and do that. But I'll move on to broadband. I just wanted to ask you some questions. You've heard a lot about broadband stuff from Tom and Jim, but I just wanted to ask you some basic questions about it. Things do you think about at your home? Like, how much do you pay for broadband at your house? What is your speed that you get? What is your upload speed or your download speed? Wi-Fi coverage in your home, is it adequate for what you want to do? How about how many devices that you have connected to your Wi-Fi, and do you have enough bandwidth to do the things that you want to do with your internet coverage at home? You know, one of the things that the pandemic did, and I think Jim touched on this a little bit, was it really showed you how essential broadband was to residents in their home. We always knew about business, but what about residents? And, you know, it changed the way we do things, like go on doctor's visits. It changed the way we educate students. We work from home. Many of you are at home right now and are using your Wi-Fi connection or your internet connection to be on this call. So even more like that. So how about entertainment stuff that you use your internet for? Streaming TV. How about multiple streams? All those things take up bandwidth at your house. So having reliable internet is super important. I could talk about that on and on and on. Senator Scott talked to this group not too long ago, and he talked about the importance of a reliable and affordable broadband access in our region. And so that kind of leads me into a partnership that we have formed with Blue Ridge Electric Cooperative. They serve a much larger area right above our service area and have a lot of customers. And so we're so excited to be able to say that, hey, we're partnering with Blue Ridge Electric to bring gigabit internet, symmetrical gigabit internet over fiber to their customers and also that region. We're excited to be able to announce that. I think our companies mesh so well. We're a cooperative and they're a cooperative, and our values line up so much. We're about customer service, and I guess I am making this sound a little bit like a commercial, but that's not my intent, but to tell you of the good things that are coming to that region. Good customer service, extremely quality service, employees that live in the area and serve the area, but also, you know, a strong desire to see our communities grow and prosper. And that's what we're about, serving underserved. We've been providing service over fiber for a long time. And I appreciate the opportunity to come talk about that, what one company is doing in our area. We're very proud of that. So thank you, Dean and Justine and Tom and Jim.
Thank you. So would you just repeat for me your service area currently?
Yeah, so Abbeville County, McCormick County, and the Star and Iva areas of Anderson County are our traditional areas. And then we provide service in Columbia County, Georgia, Greenwood, and a partnership with the city of Newberry.
Thank you very much. That must be interesting, crossing the border into another state.
It is very interesting, a lot different, but they're a growing area as well.
Okay, I just have one quick question. I'm not sure if it's really answerable, but we have someone on who I've heard before. I've heard this person say that they're in an area, I believe, on the map that says they would have service, but I think they're on the edge. So the question is, to what degree is access dependent upon density and number of people who are in that vicinity? Is there a algorithm?
Well, it's kind of two parts, and I'll let Shannon pick up a piece of this. Let me talk to the mapping side of that first. You know, Justine, talking about the maps, the way that the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, collects data, it's done at a census block level. And each provider every 6 months is required to report to the FCC the type of service, the technology that they use, as well as the maximum advertised and download speed and upload speed at a census block level. And one of the things that ORS did such an awesome job with over the last 6 months is to really attack that problem and get underneath the census block and get more to an addressable premise level. There's a lot of challenges to that. It won't shock anybody. The level of GIS capability in one county versus another could be dramatically different, and it is. There are a lot of street address challenges, different parts of communities. So the FCC does it at a census block level. The way the rules are written allow a provider to, if they serve a single home in the census block, they're allowed to say that they serve the whole census block. So it's very easy for a consumer to say, hey, I live there, and the block shows that it's green, but yet I can't get anything. So that's a challenge. It'll probably always be a challenge, to be honest, but we're looking at ways to attack that, both from a mapping and the speed test side, but also with the ability of a consumer to actually fill out a form and say, hey, the maps are wrong. You know, we don't have that worked out yet, but it's in process. And Tom, you can add to that anything you think of.
You know, Jim summed it up nicely. He's exactly right. I mean, the challenges associated with mapping what is a fairly small state in South Carolina have been just unbelievable. And so when you do dig down to those levels, again, between the discrepancy between some of the counties is incredible. So, you know, we do ask for folks' patience to get that map straight. You know, it's really been a juggling act, and Jim, again, we appreciate his partnership and guidance that he's loaned to us in the entire process that we've been going through.
Thank you so much. We'll share a recording of the meeting and the slides with all the really great links and tools that are in there with everyone who's in attendance today. Oh, we appreciate you all being here. So let's move on to Dean is going to do our Upstate Initiative update. You're muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you, Justine, and thank you to our speakers. As some of you remember, when we did our county listening tour back in the summer of our non-urban counties, broadband was such a critical issue at the time and continues to be. And I think it's a credit that so much has happened in just a short period of time. And I think we all see it, as was said. I think Jim said it, that you know, broadband is really part of our core utilities now, something that even a year or two years ago, in some cases, maybe was seen as a little bit less critical to our day-to-day. But so thank you all for that. I'm going to be very quick and just mention a couple upcoming things, but I want to start by Justine or Erica, if you could put in our partner link to our partner funding partner page. I want to thank, we have a number of our funding partners are on here. I've said this before, but I think it's critical to remind everyone that, you know, we've been very fortunate. Next week will be a year, believe it or not, since the pandemic was officially started or announced as a pandemic, and you know, all of our lives flipped, and we've been very fortunate to be able to pivot in a direction to continue to provide connections and communication and information. And it's really because of the great partners that we have across the upstate. So I want to thank all of them for their support and recognize that. I'm very excited about some of the things we have coming up. We think by August or September, we will be able to get back to some in-person events. We have we're planning on doing a big outdoor expo, a barbecue, an expo, a networking event in August or early September. So be on the lookout for that. We have a lot of workshops happening next couple of weeks around entrepreneurship. Our Upstate Planners group is meeting, our senior group, and others. So Erica is going to put that schedule on there. So please be sure to check that out. And then our Upstate Vibe calendar, which prior to the pandemic, you know, there was something happening in the Upstate 365 days a year, and that calendar is very robust. And we are continuing to re-ramp that up as folks are starting to have some events. I saw the Peace Center in Greenville has events coming up. I know the Abbeville Opera House has had some events recently and others. So please be sure and check that calendar out. Then our next TAT Chat coming up on the 18th of April. We have someone from AnMed Health. We're going to talk about mental health. I think all of us know that's been a critical issue. And so he's going to share some tips and some things to watch for employees and family and our own mental health. So we appreciate that and look forward to that coming up on March 18th. So with that, Justine, I'll turn it back over to you to do our county updates.
Thank you. I see that Stephen Taylor has made it, Economic Development Director for Abbeville County. Thank you for coming on to give us an update what's happening in Abbeville County.
Thank you, Justine. The big thing that we've really been discussing about throughout the country and throughout the state and the region is unemployment. Many of y'all have probably known unemployment, you know, really skyrocketed during the pandemic, but we've actually seen those numbers really drop pretty quickly since May of last year from a high of 13.9. We're proud that we got our last numbers at 4.8. So that's been a great thing. Actually working with an industry and manufacturer, we've seen a good bit of activity with our existing industry, and actually we've seen a good bit for new industry. And being in a rural community like that, it's great to see that. I would like to say, I don't know how many communities are doing this, but I would like to tout that the Upper Savannah workforce team did a virtual career day. I don't know if anybody's done this yet, but we're really proud of that. And I'll even say that WC TEL actually participated in that, and I appreciate them participating with a young professional. And we felt like they went over really well. We're probably going to look at doing some more of those. So that's kind of just a quick update from Abbeville County.
Thank you. We've heard of several virtual workforce days, so we'll put the link to that in the recap. And that is great news. It's good to have some upbeat news.
And Justine, before we leave Stephen, can you also talk about the work y'all are doing around transportation? Because I think that's important. I know you're in the early stages there, but can you touch on that briefly?
Yeah, it's been noted by Dean. There's only a few counties that are not doing public transportation, and I know our neighboring county, Greenwood's, looking at it. So we've actually started working very closely on looking at that and evaluating how that affects our communities. And then again, we've had some people locally that's kind of helped us doing some surveys. So as that move forward, we'd like to keep this group in the loop on that.
Great. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you very much. Okay, and next we will have the new-ish Executive Director of Union County Library, Taylor Atkinson. I think I saw Taylor on the Zoom.
I'm here. Thank you, Justine. So I've been here in Union since 2017 as the Assistant Director, but have been recently named as the Executive Director. So a few things going on in Union, specifically at the library, but it's affecting Union on a county level. We have recently hired a full-time social worker. So she is in our second week with us, which is really fantastic. She is a South Carolina native, so she's very familiar with South Carolina resources. And I'm looking forward to having her do a lot of community outreach, a lot of work out in the community to connect our rural residents to local resources, and then, you know, beyond in the kind of the Tri-County area, which includes Spartanburg and Cherokee. We also in Union are kind of working on our own workaround to broadband. Jim is familiar with this. I attended some of his community champion training. So as a public library, we are named an anchor institution by the FCC, which means that it is mandated we have access to broadband internet. And that basically is a workaround. And so that means that any institution that is named a library institution in the community is required to have internet access. So that means for very rural parts of Union County where it would be very unlikely to have a vendor come in and install that infrastructure. We have been able to do so for certain rural parts of our county at little to no cost to the community. So for example, in Carlisle, one of our municipalities, AT&T has run fiber optic cable to Carlisle. And again, that was at zero cost to the Carlisle community, which is fantastic. We are working on expanding several other sites throughout Union County as well.
That's amazing. Are you open your normal hours currently?
Good question. So we're not back to pre-COVID hours. We have been slowly expanding. Previously, we were not allowing kind of browsing hours. Folks could still get materials, but basically we would check them out for you, have them bagged and ready to go. We've recently started opening up for some browsing hours, and people are really excited for that.
Great, thank you so much. Dean, that's it for me. If you have anything else.
Great. Well, we are a little bit ahead again, Terrence. So I would say if anyone wants to unmute and has any announcements or anything they want to share with the group, we do have a minute or two if there is anything. I see a lot of good friends on the call, and I may pick on a couple. Roy Costner in Pickens County. Tell me what's going on real quick in your world and in Pickens County.
Well, we've got a new council in place with two new folks on there with Councilman Alex Seda and Councilman Henry Wilson. We are working, we're working on our partnership with Blue Ridge Electric Co-op and WC Fiber to provide broadband for all of Pickens County. And we've come up with a pretty innovative way to be able to do that, I believe. So we're very excited to get that process started. So that's one of the things that we're working on this year.
Great. And I'm also going to turn to our friend and new TATT board member, Mayor Sen in Lawrence. I know, Nathan, we were talking earlier before everybody came on about a couple things going on in Lawrence County. Why don't you give us a quick update as well?
Sure. Well, I'll piggyback in the elections and council thing. We had a city council election on Tuesday night, and there were no changes there, but good to know who I'm going to be working with for the next 2 years at least. As far as sort of community-wide stuff, really the most important thing we're working on right now is the use of our city rec facility called the Ridge. We've partnered with Prisma, and that's being used as a vaccination center. That's been a hugely effective partnership, and we're actually getting local churches involved who will help. This sort of ties into the broadband issue. They'll help folks who may not have internet access in their homes to be able to sign up for a vaccination appointment so that they can get that done and sort of keep the process flowing, because right now they're just doing it by appointment only. And really one of the most fun things we've been working on is a commission that has been appointed by the county to oversee, well, I should say oversee, but give guidance as to the renovation of our historic courthouse. If you Google Lawrence County, it's the first building that comes up. So just looking at the future of that building, what the next 200 years will look like for it. It's kind of exciting.
Great. Well, that certainly is one of the iconic buildings in your community, and I'm sure it has served the community very well. And to figure out how it can serve in the future is of course very important. One last thing I wanted to mention: we just got last night from DHEC information about an environmental justice grant that is available across the country, including our region. We have sent it out to all of our partners in our planners group and air quality group and sustainable growth. But if anyone else is interested, if you have not heard about that grant and are interested in learning more about it, please let me or Justine know and we can share that information. The grant is due in early May. They're having some information sessions, even actually starting today around it. So wanted to share that. That's an issue we've talked about before in these meetings. With that, Terrence, I'll turn it over to you. And we, again, a lot of great information, and really appreciate everybody being a part of this. And I'll turn it back to you, Terrence.
Good. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, everybody, all the presenters. And as Dean said, it's always good information, timely information. I know that right at the very start of the pandemic, we were doing some talks around the region, and broadband just kept popping up in some of the rural areas. And it's good to see from a state level that our legislators have funded it, and now it's been implemented. And so I look forward to continuing progress on that. If I had a proclamation to give, I would say, everybody take the rest of the afternoon off, enjoy the sunshine, and do that. And I proclaim that today, this day, the 4th, at this time. But anyway, I hope everybody has a good weekend, and stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask. Thank you.
So you're trying to be mayor for the region, right, Terrence?
That has a good sound to it. I don't know if Roy might, you know,
Oh my
he's sitting
goodness.
there shaking his head there, right? Misery loves company. You can be the vice mayor of the region.
Okay, then I'm good then.
You good? All right.
Yeah.
Everybody have a good day.
Since you're my
See you.
chairman, I guess that means I get the rest of the afternoon off. So
Yeah, you can go home. Everybody go home.
Well, thank
Have
you,
some fun.
everybody, and we will talk with you in a couple weeks.
All right. See you, Dean. See you
Bye,
tomorrow.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, bye.